Welcome to the Talk of Simsbury. My name is Dominique Avery. Today, the talk is about the Talcott Mountain Music Festival. It was 1996, almost 20 years ago, that the Hartford Symphony Orchestra held its first summer season here. It was in a temporary band shell on the property of the Hartford, and it was a huge success. It was great listening to beautiful music outdoors, especially with the extraordinary close-up view of the Hugh Tower. But the Hartford needed these lawn, and the festival moved to CL&P. Then in 2002, the town of Simsbury bought the Simsbury Meadows property for soccer fields and the new summer home of the Symphony. It was still in a temporary band shell. The permanent Performing Arts Center stage was built just in time for the 2005 season. The view is not quite as great, but the sound is magnificent. Enough history. Let me introduce my guests from the Hartford Symphony, Steve Collins, who is the Artistic and Operations Director, fairly new, I understand, and Carole Olefsky, who is a cellist who has been with the orchestra for an extraordinary 45 years, and she also serves as the co-chair of the Talcott Mountain Music Festival. Carole, you were there at the beginning. Do you remember how it was that the symphony came to Simsbury?
We had some board members who were passionate about a summer music festival, and they really were the backbone. Unfortunately, they moved to Florida a few years ago, so we don't see them now, but they were just wonderful organizers and passionate about it.
So were they Simsbury residents or just Hartford employees? Oh, interesting.
They weren't.
Oh, but they had the idea to put it at the Hartford.
Yes.
And what I said in the beginning was that the view from the Hartford of Hugh Tower is unbelievable.
Beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful. And I remember that first season just sitting there looking as the dusk fell. It was so gorgeous.
Beautiful.
So you mentioned to me earlier before we went on camera that you played at the opening of the building?
Yes, I played string quartet. Went to the opening from the Hartford Symphony, and we played during their lunchtime, and they loved it. And we promoted the Talcott Mountain Music Festival, of course.
I think it's sort of as an aside, it's interesting that the Symphony in Simsbury, Talcott Mountain Music Festival is still there, and the Hartford is actually leaving that building. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Dominique.
I know that one of the things that you are interested in doing is publicizing your summer schedule. So can you give us a little rundown of what it is that's going to be happening here?
Sure, absolutely. So the first concert is on June 26th, and we are featuring the Mambo Kings. So Mambo Kings are a quintet of Latin American musicians who play all the great Latin American dance styles of music: mambo, cha-cha, rumba, salsa, tango, and on and on. The orchestra is being led by a guest conductor named Bob Bernhardt, who's one of the best-known pops conductors in the country, and it's going to be a wonderful way to kick off the season with dance music. So you have to wear your dancing shoes and you can dance in the middle. The second concert is on the 4th of July weekend. The concert is actually the 3rd of July, called Celebrate America. This is a great tradition out here at the Talcott Mountain Music Festival. The concert is being led once again by Eric Dudley, who's a Simsbury native.
Right.
Grew up here and went to school here and learned music here, and he's just a phenomenally talented musician, a singer and conductor. So he'll be leading the orchestra along with our guest artist, the Asylum Hill Congregational Church Choir, in a program of American music, and also celebrating the various influences that European and Latin American cultures have had on American music.
And that's the concert that ends with the fireworks.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the traditional 1812.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. I was wondering if I should mention that or just save it as a little surprise. But I guess since it's a tradition, it's not much of a surprise.
It's been around,
right? Yeah. So absolutely, we'll finish the program with 1812 and Stars and Stripes, and then on the final note, the fireworks will light up the sky. It'll be fantastic, and it won't rain again this year.
Yeah, Carole and I were discussing last year.
We're done.
It was actually terrible. It rained the Friday night.
I heard. Unfortunately,
so you weren't there.
I wasn't there. I joined the Hartford Symphony in August of 2014, right after the end of last summer season, but I've heard all about it. The third concert is kind of our 20th anniversary celebration concert. We're calling it 20 Seasons in Simsbury. And the orchestra will be conducted by Michael Lancaster. Now, in case folks don't know who Michael Lancaster is, he was the music director of the Symphony for about 14 years, I think, the kind of the 80s through mid-90s. And he was the first conductor with the orchestra back 20 years ago when the festival began.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's why you're bringing him back.
Exactly.
Actually, people in Simsbury do remember him because he was extraordinarily active with the Symphony coming to Simsbury and playing with the students. And I think Eric Dudley was a student then, and I think he won a contest and was a soloist. I may be wrong, but
no, I've heard similar tales, so I'm going to say it's true. I'm going to say it happened for sure. But that program will be a wonderful celebration of the 20 years out here in Simsbury. So it's kind of a greatest hits program. Some classical music, light classics, pops. We're going to feature musicians of the orchestra. We're going to feature a couple selections that were on the very first program 20 years ago. So it's kind of a nod to the past and also looking forward. I'll give you remember? I'll give you one hint. The program opened with Shostakovich.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So I'll leave you guessing.
I still don't remember.
You played a lot of concerts, Carole.
Right. The fourth concert is called Classical Night Fever, and it's a disco dance party. And the orchestra will be led by our music director, Carole Kwan, who, in case you haven't heard, has just re-upped her contract to stay with us through 2022. So we're really, really excited about that, and this concert will be another opportunity to celebrate her longevity and the longevity of the festival, of course. So our guest artists are a disco band, and they'll play all the great disco favorites that you know and love. Another great opportunity to dance in the grass, as well as kind of a audience trivia game with television sitcom theme songs that were popular during the 70s and early 80s. So
are you hearing about this for the first time, Carole?
Yes.
Some of it, right?
Yeah, just about that.
And then the last concert, we'll wrap up the season with the music of Queen. So we have a wonderful guest artist named Brody Dolyanik from Las Vegas. He's a Las Vegas headliner, and he'll be our Freddie Mercury for the day, the front man of the 70s, 80s rock band Queen. And we'll play all the greatest hits. We have an orchestral really wonderful orchestral arrangements to accompany the band, and we think it'll be a great way to end the season. So that's the lineup.
Sounds very interesting. Steve, I have heard some grumbling, though, about starting the season with Mambo Kings rather than the traditional pure classical concert, because there are a lot of people who love to go to the Symphony and then go away for the summer, so they always stay.
Oh. Well,
so maybe you haven't thought about that.
Well, they'll have to come back. Seriously, a lot of details have to align to produce the concerts and the schedule. You have the venue and the guest artists, and there's a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross, and sometimes the schedule needs to be switched to make all that work. I do think that there's an advantage of putting the classical concert in the middle of the season, in that it's kind of like the celebration concert of the 20th anniversary. And to do it at the front would have been great too, or at the end, but this is where we wound up, and I hope folks can buy into the celebration. And I will venture to say, the folks that come to the first concert will have a phenomenal time. The Mambo Kings program is spectacular. It's really great.
Well, it sounds interesting. So, Carole, as from the cellist or member of the orchestra perspective, is there an advantage or a disadvantage to playing outdoors? What do you think of the whole thing? I
like it. The only time I don't like it maybe is when it's 95 to 100 degrees. But then this Hartford Symphony takes good care of us. They have fans going and plenty of water. But to look out there and, for instance, the 4th of July and see the entire field filled with 7,500 people, it's just a great feeling.
So you enjoy playing it. It's a different feeling than being at the Bushnell.
And I enjoy the music, all kinds of music. It's a lot of fun.
So, yeah, you get an opportunity to do some different things.
Yes.
from what I've been noticing, Carolyn Kwan does quite a few different sorts of things as well. And now she's signed on for another 6 years. I assume the orchestra is happy about that?
Very happy.
Yeah, you like her?
Very happy. Yes,
She's dynamic.
We love her. Yes.
Smart.
Everything.
Yeah.
She's got it all.
She's done it all. She does do a lot of guest conducting, though. I see that she's often traveling somewhere.
Sure.
And I did notice that you're looking for an assistant conductor. Is that right?
Absolutely. In just a few more weeks, we're going to launch the search for an assistant conductor. The position is being established to assist Carolyn to help assist the production of our education programs and to help out with some of the guest conducting opportunities with the orchestra. Each year, the orchestra employs a number of guest conductors to do some Masterworks concerts, Pops concerts out here at Talcott Mountain, and Discovery concerts, our children's concerts. So in having an assistant conductor in place, that person will assume some of those responsibilities and add a level of consistency to all those projects. So we're really excited about that.
So I heard a rumor that you were interested in having an opera as the first concert. Is that true?
Well, you hear a lot of rumors. I don't know who you're talking to. The first concert of our classical season?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about the first concert, but our 15-16 season will feature an opera. We're playing Gluck's Orpheus and Eurydice, and it will be produced in April of 2016. So that is true. Not the first slot, but later on in the season.
So a lot of people who love the Talcott Mountain Music Festival sort of dream of Tanglewood.
Yeah.
And which is very classical oriented, but I understand it just doesn't sell that well in Simsbury. Do you think that maybe they've been talking about putting a roof over the first part of the audience? Do you think that would help in terms of being able to have more classical concerts?
Perhaps. I think having a roof structure over part of the facility like you described would create a lot of really interesting possibilities. And exactly how that would kind of play out, it's kind of too early to say. I think there's some interesting possibilities. We could definitely experiment with more classical concerts. The opportunity to produce the concert rain or shine creates a whole different dynamic. So it's kind of too early to tell, but yeah, I think that's a really exciting possibility. And I know I speak for the orchestra in saying that we'd love to be a partner in helping investigate those possibilities and flesh out those plans as much as we can.
So as far as I can tell, it's just in the thinking stage right now.
I believe so. I can't speak for the town of Simsbury or the Performing Arts Center, but I know there's some very talented people working on the project.
So Steve, let me ask a little bit about your background.
Sure.
As you said, you've been with the orchestra now since last August. I saw that you were with Waterbury Orchestra. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what your background is, what your interest in music is. Sure.
So prior to coming to the Hartford Symphony, I was executive director of the Waterbury Symphony. And before that, the education director of the New Haven Symphony. And I won't bore you with the details before that. But I'm also a percussionist and have been since the beginning. And still play professionally, still play with the Bridgeport Symphony and Waterbury Symphony and New Haven Symphony and a lot of different theater engagements and things like that. So I'm still a performing musician, and I think it's really important for orchestra administrators to have at least some of that background, if not be an active performer as well, because it really informs the dialogue, and it kind of takes one to know one kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So.
That's interesting. So did you start playing drums as a child? How did
Sure.
you
Well, I started on piano when I was 5 years old. My older sister was taking piano lessons, and I said, "What about me?" So I studied piano for quite a while when I was a child, and then switched to drums and percussion when I was about 13. And truth be told, I really didn't discover orchestral music until late high school, when I kind of figured out, okay, I'm going to make this my life, my career, and I didn't really have a clue how to do that. But so I was fortunate enough to wind up at the Hart School of Music and study with a man named Alexander Lepak. He was the percussion teacher there for many, many, many years. And through that experience of learning about how to audition for music schools and those first couple of years at the Hart School, I really I really found orchestral music and really fell in love with it.
So what's your favorite piece of music using percussion?
That's like, what's your favorite food, or your favorite color, or your favorite day of the year? You know, I believe variety is the spice of life in all those things, and I just really can't say.
Some composers who use more percussion, and it's more important than
I will
others.
say this: in terms of percussion writing, some of my favorite composers are Shostakovich, Stravinsky, Bartók, Beethoven. Although that's more about timpani, but you just can't ignore the writing he did for timpani. John Williams' movie music is so much fun to play. You agree with me, Carole?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just fantastic writing. The list goes on and on. And I think it's important to know, too, that as much as I love orchestral music, I have a lot of other musical genres that I love listening to and performing as well. And I think that's really important to, again, just kind of inform the discussion.
Carole, how about you? How did you get into music and choose the cello? And
I insisted in the 3rd grade that I had to play the violin, even though they didn't start until the 4th grade. So my mother got permission for me to start the violin in school. And then in the 5th grade, the cellist, the only cellist in the school, was moving on to 6th grade and out of the school. So they asked, well, would anybody like to play the cello? And I thought, well, if I play the cello, my mother will have to drive me to school and pick me up.
so it's a big instrument for a child.
So I said, I'll play the cello. They told me to go home and ask my parents, and it was fine with them. I suppose a squeaky cello was better than a squeaky violin.
It's true, it does sound better.
So
you
I started that cello in the 5th grade.
Uh-huh. And then what made you keep on with it? Not every child who starts with an instrument keeps on.
I think my parents encouraged me. And playing a musical instrument, it's been all over Facebook lately. You use both sides of your brain, which I guess is a very good thing. Mm-hmm. So they encouraged me my whole life. Although my mother did say to me, I want you to think about one thing. You're going to have to carry this the rest of your life. So you think about it. and at that time, my father carried it, so...
So it didn't occur to him.
Right.
So the cello has always struck me as sort of an ungainly instrument for a woman, just in terms of, sort of how you sit and what you wear. So
yes.
I'm going to ask an odd question. I don't know whether you've discussed it with people before. There's sort of the rules about what you wear when you play in an instrument. Are there rules? Do you have rules for your orchestra?
Sure.
What are they?
Well, there's a dress code for the orchestra, and it varies depending on the kind of concert we do. Like, for example, at the Bushnell Farm Masterwork series, the men wear tails and the women wear formal evening gowns and all that, which they're not going to wear out here in the summer in Talcott. So it varies, but there is a formal dress code. And I would like to add, Dominique, that you said the cello could be kind of ungainly. I've always thought of it as the most sensual instrument.
Well, you
so
could look at it that way, too.
There.
So let me ask you another maybe question that you don't want to answer, and that is you were with the New Haven Symphony, the Waterbury Symphony, and sort of now with the Hartford Symphony. Are there differences in the audience? Is one more sophisticated than the other?
It's funny. There are differences, and I wouldn't say it's not really as black and white as one is more sophisticated or really that clear, but there are definite differences in preferences. And it kind of begs the question, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? If the orchestra plays more music of a certain type because they believe that that's what the audience wants, then the only people that will go to those concerts are people that want that kind of music. So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, but in general, if you compare maybe the New Haven Symphony's programming to Hartford Symphony, you'll notice some differences, and maybe one does more of a certain kind of type of composer than the other, maybe a different nationality emphasis. So there's things like that. They're kind of subtleties, though. I think in general, the really great thing is that all the orchestras in Connecticut are doing really wonderful work. There's great musicians involved, and there's a great variety of programming. So there's something for everybody.
So if I were to ask both of you, I know there's some people who think that the classical music is sort of in trouble. What do you think?
I don't think so, but I'm going to defer to Carole for first response, if you don't mind.
Classical music isn't in trouble?
I mean, that, you know, that it's...
In terms of audience appeal?
In terms of, exactly, audience appeal.
Actually, I've been seeing a lot more young people at our concerts.
Really?
Especially in this past year.
Oh, that's
So we
very
must be
interesting.
doing something to appeal to them.
Well,
I hope.
Sure.
I think if you look at Carole and Kwan's choice of music and how she does it, I
Yes.
think that might be a
Exactly.
reason.
Exactly.
I saw a lot of young people at the ballet performance that we had. So it's very encouraging.
Absolutely. I think, you know, in a lot of ways, I think orchestral music, and I prefer to call it orchestral music because to label something as classical
Right.
music it's a certain stereotype and literally
Right.
it defines a certain rather narrow band of musical style. So I prefer orchestral music. And if you look at orchestral music across the country and really around the world, in a sense, it's more popular than it's ever been. Right. And just to point out one small example, the most popular way for video game developers to score their music is with an orchestra.
Right.
So it begs the question: if orchestral music is dying, why are the video game developers that are appealing to children using orchestral music? Because it's incredibly expressive and powerful, and it's a broad dynamic palette. So that's just one example, and I think you touched on something that's really important. The programming that Carolyn has brought to the orchestra is really varied, and it's about starting to present concerts in a different way. It's a slightly different user experience than it was 10 years ago. And moving forward, it's going to get even more developed in that way about really innovative collaborations with different kinds of artists and about a more visual appeal and an interactive appeal to concerts. So that's the direction the HSO is heading. And if you look at the orchestras and musical ensembles that are doing that kind of work, they're doing very well. So that's the idea.
So how is the marriage between the Bushnell and the Hartford Symphony working out? It's been about a year now.
Sure, yeah. I think it's one of the most exciting things happening in American orchestra management right now. It's phenomenal. The alliance, as we call it, has brought to the orchestra some real bench strength. There's a depth of talent at the Bushnell that the orchestra really never had access to before and would not really be able to develop on its own in production, programming, finance, marketing, development, and the fruits of those connections of that bench strength are just starting to come to fruition. It's an honor to work for the organization and tremendously exciting at this moment in time. Do you have any thoughts on that, Carole, from the musician's perspective?
It seems like there is more innovation, that we are able to do more because we have the strength of the Bushnell. And it's now our home, which we like. Which
is fantastic. to have our administrative offices in the hall that we do, where we do most of our performances, is highly advantageous.
I remember, I think I told Carole about this earlier, I once interviewed for a job at the Hartford Symphony, and I forget, it was somewhere down Farmington Avenue in sort of a boxy building, right? And the concern was about money, and they had so little money, and they had, so I mean, I think it's probably a good thing. It was a very good idea.
Oh, yeah.
But weren't there fears, though, that the symphony would somehow...
Any changes, fearful.
So were the orchestra members a little nervous?
A little fearful, but of course that's natural.
So are they mostly happy about it now?
I think so.
Yeah. When you first attended this first little chamber music concert when the Hartford opened, and then later these people from the Hartford started this Talcott Mountain Music Festival, did you ever think that it would become as successful as it is now?
No, I didn't. Because at the Hartford, most people were sitting out in the parking lot. And it was sort of a temporary feeling, like, oh, we'll see what happens.
I bet.
But, we had a lot of support from a lot of businesses and personal contacts, and it all just came together. And it was exciting.
I bet.
I remember the first 4th of July that we played at the Hartford. It was pouring rain, but there was a huge audience. They had tents set up, which we don't allow now, but tents and umbrellas, and it was filled. So it was very exciting.
Yeah, I think a lot of people now take it for granted. It's here. It's been here for 20 years, and I also sort of remember that initial excitement. And do you ever dream of sort of coming close to a Tanglewood or with that kind of?
I don't know. I think that what is in place here is really special, and to think about a small group of volunteers started this festival 20 years ago, and it's not only survived continuously for 20 years, but has grown and blossomed. I mean, within the last 10 years, the current structure was built, and the plans now for the roof, and I understand that there's a senior/community center building that may be planned on site as well. I mean, to see that kind of development and to see how the orchestra has grown and the different the variety of programming that's going on at the festival now, it's really impressive. And it all started with a small group of people, including 2 leading musicians, one of which is Carole. The other which I want to give credit to Steve Perry, our tuba player.
Absolutely.
Steve was alongside Carole at the beginning.
He was wonderful. He had wonderful ideas.
Yeah.
He was just a real asset.
Okay, so we're just about out of time. I just wanted to mention that I quickly looked up when Tanglewood started. It started in 1934, also as a tiny idea. So anyway, so in the last minute that we have, why don't you tell our audience how they can get tickets, single tickets, tables, just grass passes, anything. Just let them know.
They need to contact the Hartford Symphony Orchestra box office. They can do that by phone or online. Just go to hartfordsymphony.org. And I would give the phone number if I remembered it, but somehow phone numbers don't stick with me. So it's probably on my brochure right here.
Well, we'll put up a web address.
Banner. Excellent.
Right. And maybe the phone number.
And folks can also buy tickets right here, right on site at Simsbury Meadows, starting 2 weeks before the first concert.
And I understand that single tickets are being sold.
Yes, single tickets are on sale, grass passes, table seating, the whole works.
Well, our time is up. Thanks to everyone here at SCTV behind the scenes for getting the show on the air. Thanks especially to my guests, Carole Olefsky and Steve Collins, for joining me. It's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed the conversation. And finally, thank you for joining us. If you missed any portion of the show, you can always find it on our website at simsburytv.org. I'm Dominique Avery. See you next time for the Talk of Simsbury.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.